I made this video so I can talk about this stupid movie that I watched and hated, but after deciding to make a video about it, then rewatching it and working on this script, I've fallen in love with it. So now you have to suffer with me. This movie has been my existence for the past 3 days of watching it, then rewatching it, then recording, writing a script, and rewatching it with my roommate, and then editing and making this video. I need to talk about this movie so this hyperfixation can get out of my head and I can work on something else. Please. Knights of the Zodiac is a movie adaptation of the manga Saint Seiya and the animated series Sato Seiya Knights of the Zodiac. And when you know this, the movie changes. Getting into this movie, I knew absolutely nothing. I barely read the Netflix description, like introduction of the actual movie, because I just love falling in love with movies for no reason, where I don't need to read additional books or watch an additional show that connects it to it, or read these all 16 books to kind of get an idea of what the universe is, because here is an idea of what it could be, but in a movie. I hate that. I just want to watch a movie, figure out what it's about, get dissolved into this lore and this world, and then just be entertained. And I just wasn't entertained. Well, maybe a little bit, since I decided to watch this movie 4 times, then write a whole script about it, do research, and then also make this whole video and decide to edit it as well. So I can't wait to show you and take you on this ride. So with the words of Sean Bean,
you might want to buckle up,
because this is gonna be a ride. So to keep this video very easily watchable, I have divided it into chapters of the topics that I'm going to talk about. They are both down below in the description and you can see them here. This video is going to contain spoilers for the movie Knights of the Zodiac. So if you don't want spoilers, maybe go watch the movie right now and then come back to this video while you're done. But in case you want to stay, then let's get into our first topic, which is the shortest recap I can possibly make while pretending like you're 5 and I'm really trying to sell this movie to you. Seiya has powers called Cosmo, but he's not the only one with Cosmo, but his Cosmo is very special. He learns that Athena has been reborn and he's destined to protect her by learning to control his own Cosmo. The mortal Sienna has Athena's Cosmo, which is very powerful and difficult to control. With the powers come future visions, and one vision tells Sienna to lose control over Athena's powers, which then draws the old gods to her to destroy her and the planet. Her adoptive parents, Guraad and Alman, have opposite opinions about it. Guraad wants to stop Sienna from becoming too powerful and destroying the planet, where Alman wants Sienna to control her powers by simply loving her a whole lot. So Seiya has to kick a lot about doing the movie while using his Pegasus Cosmo powers. Characters! Luckily we have a fairly small cast of characters that are mentionable, and they are all introduced in a very slow and natural way with a very few exceptions. Some of these introductions are a little bit oddly placed, but after rewatching the movie I understand why they did what they did, but that doesn't necessarily make it a great decision either, because I don't feel like I need to rewatch the same movie in order to get details that are essential for the movie, like what characters are and what their names are. Some of the characters aren't even mentioned except in the subtitle. So 2 of the characters I didn't know what they were named other than reading it through the subtitles. So the first character we're gonna talk about is Seiya. Seiya is our bread and butter, our main character, the one we follow throughout this entire story. He's a street boy fighter with a calm attitude. Patricia, referred to as Pat throughout most of the movie by our main character Seiya, because she is his lost sister that he is looking for throughout this movie. Docrates. He's only in a very few scenes and barely has any lines, but oh my gosh, he is a character and a half. Very early on in the movie he gets kidnapped and we see him only in 2 scenes after that. But his employer Alman Kido doesn't really seem to care that his employee just got kidnapped, so I guess rest in peace Docrates. We don't know what happened to him afterwards. Alman Kido. He functions as Seiya's quest giver and is the one giving him the necessary information for him to actually do anything in the movie. That's all he does. And can I just say, when I was rewatching this movie with my roommate and this man shows up on the screen in 1 frame, my roomie calls out, "That's Sean Bean! He's the dad! Oh my god, he's gonna die." And I just sat there like, he's been in 1 frame. What do you mean? But apparently it's just like a Sean Bean thing that his character just has to die. I didn't know that. So damn, that's a fact that really pisses me off, and I'll get to that later as well as we dive deeper into the characters. Vander Guraad. She is the opposite of Alman, who works as our villain and is the main conflict throughout the movie. The Black Knights are basically just Guraad's goons, whom she either created or altered in some way. We don't really get a clear answer on it, but it is alluded to here and there in the movie that she has some influence on their creations. Apparently I somehow just skipped over a couple, so I'm sorry for Cassios and Mylock. This is gonna be just a voiceover. Cassios is the owner of the fighting pit, the Octagon, where Seiya is first introduced. He first functions as a challenge for Seiya and later functions as a bigger obstacle that Seiya has to pass multiple times to reach his goal. Literally. Mylock. Mylock is Alman's assistant. He can do anything. He is arguably the best character throughout this whole thing, but only outdone by Nero's acting, cause that man, oh gosh. Anyways, back to real me. She is Alman and Guraad's daughter. After a disagreement on Sienna's future, they split and Sienna stayed with Alman. Guraad is trying to get her back as she is the reborn Athena. Shortly, Sienna functions as Seiya's romantic interest, but the year chose to scrap that or drag it out. However, she sorta does end up functioning as Seiya's motivation. And after looking up a bunch of things, I figured out that in the manga, she is not Seiya's romantic interest. There's another one, I think her name is Gemini. So I think that's why they decided to maybe not do that, even though they allude to it, probably for the fans' attention. Marin. She's a very mysterious woman who is played by Caitlin Hudson, but voiced by Katie Ann Moy, which I found to be a very interesting casting choice. She doesn't share much of her origin. She is called the Silver Knight and she functions as Seiya's mentor. Nero is Guraad's assistant, who for the most part works just as Guraad's right-hand man, but later becomes a threat to the whole cast, essentially. I had to sit down because my body is tired. I've been standing up for like 2 hours just talking to myself. Let's take this from here. Let's overanalyze some characters. Seiya's motivation. Seiya is an orphan, presumably, who is only driven by finding Patricia. And my roommate came up with a really interesting theory that maybe Pat and Seiya are orphans, which might help the fact that it's easier to just run away and don't go back. And also why he is so intent on finding Patricia, because she is literally the only one he has left. While fighting, he avoids attacks and dances around them, exhausting the enemy so he'll come up on top without causing violence. When that doesn't work, he runs away, literally. which goes against a repeating line throughout the movie, of which Seiya doesn't know when to quit. This is said in flashbacks where Pat and Seiya are fighting and he refuses to give up, as well in the fights like the final scenes between the Pegasus and Phoenix Knight. The only differences being, in the flashbacks, Pat asks him, "You give up?" where he answers, "Never!" And in the fights in real time, the enemy says, "You don't know when to give up," where he answers, "That's what people keep saying." So he says he won't give up when he's a child, but as an adult, he shows it by not wanting to give up on fighting Pat. He doesn't want to do anything unless it helps him find Patricia. He goes along with training to become a knight because Sienna says more cosmo gives more visions. Only hers are the future and his is the past. This is a great reflection on how his motivation and power of drive is tied to his past while hers is locked to the future. Marin offers to train him if he can break a rock with his bare hands. Eventually he tries to focus his cosmo, but fails once he thinks about Pat. Surprisingly, this is a recurring plot that has a closure later when he has to figure out what his real motivation is. First we see Miriam that turns into Pat with the thought that he needs to find her, who then quickly turns into Sienna, who he is sworn to protect. But Seiya realizes that who he's really trying to protect is himself as a scared child in a closet. By comforting his younger self, he realizes that he shouldn't do what he thinks he needs to do, find Pat, nor what other people tells him to, protect Sienna, but does whatever he wants to, I think, which is save Sienna from becoming Athena. On other notes, Seiya is mostly seen wearing jeans and a red t-shirt. Red represents bravery and passion, which fits his character very well. Studies also show that the color red raises people's pulses, which could make sense to stress out his enemies while he stays focused, or that his pulse is higher so that he can act quicker in stressful situations. Red is also his color in the animated series, which is often the main character's color, or the color of the antagonist, and because of our nature of being aware of injuries or blood, our eyes are more drawn to the brightest colors like red. When the armor first accepts him, he wears sandy colored tank top and pants under the armor. The pale colors can mean a blank slate or unpolished work, symbolizing that this isn't all his powers yet, but it is a start. His cosmo is blue, symbolizing hope and discovery of the unknown. It ties in super well with Athena, who in this universe wants to go against the aggressive war-loving gods to create peace with the mortals. He is also the Pegasus Knight, where the Pegasus symbolizes spiritual growth and knowledge. It also symbolizes mind and intellect, as well as the power to turn negative into positive. His full Pegasus armor is black with silver wings and horse skulls as decorations. All the edges are with gold trim. Altogether, it gives a regal and intimidating look. Underneath his armor is the red shirt still, giving him more recognizability, which I think is a nice touch and a contrast to his blue cosmo. The armor gives costume armor though, which I think is most likely for them to be able to still move around like they do, but practically and historically it doesn't seem right. I'll just assume the armor is more for show, since Knights of Athena are these unstoppable people who technically don't need armor. Decoratively pretty, but not functional. Sienna. Sienna has been held in Alman's mansion for a long time. She's 18 years old, and sometime from when Alman and Guraad found her, Sienna had a cosmo burst that ruined Guraad's arms and cursed her. Her plot is that Athena's powers within her are growing stronger, and once they're strong enough, she'll become Athena, a completely different person from Sienna. Guraad and Alman both swore to do what was necessary if Sienna became dangerous, but Alman refused because he grew to love his daughter. Guraad never stopped loving Sienna, but she knew what she had to do to save the whole planet. Yet, being reminded of what love she has for Sienna, she stops Nero from killing Sienna. Once Seiya agrees to get trained by the Silver Knight, Sienna gives him a lunchbox, telling him he doesn't have to worry about food anymore, symbolizing that she will provide for him as long as they're close. When he leaves, she tells Alman that it was simply a last meal because most don't survive the Silver Knight's training when Alman declares his surprise over Sienna's kindness. Seiya complains while climbing the mountain to meet the Silver Knight and drops the lunch bag. Overanalyzing that means that either when he's on his own, Sienna can't provide for him, or to reach his goal, he is forced to let go of what he thinks he needs, which turns out to be actually the case. It is implied that the two have a blossoming romance, but Mylock shuts it down by saying Athena doesn't have boyfriends. This is further rejected when Seiya tries to comfort Sienna and she has a cosmo burst, as well as when she awakens in Seiya's naked arms after being able to control Athena's cosmo. They lean in, but he punches him in the tit instead. The vibe is still there, in a way, and I love a good slow burn, so I guess they need to bond more because they literally only had less than a handful of conversations together. Sienna is always seen in bright clothing symbolizing light and purity, except one time where she wears a red shirt when she gives Seiya the lunch bag. This could support the state that she is rooting for him, hoping he'll become a knight and not just die in the training. She always wears a golden seashell necklace and earrings and has nautical decor in her room. Mixing that with Greek mythology, that could tie her closer to Poseidon, which I don't quite understand, or maybe Aphrodite if it stretches far, which doesn't make sense for the movie either. When we first meet her, she's blonde with streaks of purple in her hair, symbolizing magic and mystique. It definitely hints at her god powers. Editor note: I've had a thought on Sienna's cosmo and the fact that she has seashell necklace. It is pink, and I did point on that it could have connections to Aphrodite, so my point is maybe they were just wrong about her being reborn Athena, because we don't really know that she actually is that. It's just a hypothesis. So what if she is the reborn Aphrodite instead? Just a thought. Later, her hair changes to be more purple as she has gained more of Athena's powers, making her represent her anime counterpart better. As Athena, Sienna is dressed in a white dress with a metal corset and a metal filler brooch and purple hair. She also gains a staff, which is a strong resemblance of her animated counterpart. Her cosmo is pink, which is often associated with femininity and a strong energy, but also in softer tones can feel calming. A great contrast to Seiya's blue cosmo. Alman Kido. A roommate reminded me that he, in another Percy Jackson movie, plays Zeus, which is Athena's dad, which is a little bit funny that he got cast in another role for Athena's dad. I wish Alman did more. He gives Seiya the information he needs and no more, and only in times that fits the plot. He's a great dad to Sienna and he loves her a lot, but isn't willing to do what is necessary when she becomes dangerous. Alman wants Sienna to be able to control Athena's power, but isn't shown to do anything to drive her in that direction, only to hide her bursts to be hidden from Guraad. I don't see his death necessary, and I fear they might recon it if the series continues. Sienna clearly cares a lot for Alman a lot as well, since he was her first priority when Guraad showed up to kidnap Sienna. The bomb was really dumb and had me literally laugh out loud. It exploded the whole mansion and only the mansion. He most likely sent all his living guards out except the ones Cassios killed on the way in. If Alman knew Guraad was coming for him to ask where Sienna was, even though she just found her and his plan is to explode himself and her, then why did he still have guards? Was he just okay with killing them too, but not his bomb of a daughter? Anyways, he ran towards Guraad to throw the bomb at her, but didn't leave the mansion. Skip a couple more steps, my dude, and toss it into her ship? Nah, blow up the mansion. Alman is seen in the same dark green suit with a pin of a sideways wing and another symbol chained together in gold. Green can symbolize evil but natural. It's very clean and wrinkle-free, showing he's not hiding that he is money. Like Sienna in the scene where Seiya is off to train with Marin, he also wears a red shirt under his green suit jacket instead of his usual black dress shirt. This could indicate that he's also rooting for Seiya. Guraad. Guraad is a great villain in the ways that she is shown to act and do evil doings on her own and with her goons. She and Alman were presumably the ones to unlock the secrets of Cosmo and gods, and with it, she created the Black Knights and teamed up with the Phoenix Knight. Once the threat of the Pegasus Knight is awakening, she acts and makes Cassios into a Black Knight cyborg, a project she was already working on while looking for Sienna. She does things in the background and is shown to be a real threat. She kidnaps anyone with Cosmo and drains it from them to fuel herself. She kidnaps Seiya's sister, thinking she was the Pegasus Knight, creating a beautiful rivalry with Seiya. She wants to kill Sienna, her own daughter, to save the planet from war between gods, but changes her mind last second. I don't like that ending for her. In my opinion, I would have loved to see her realize that she has a stronger love for Sienna than she thought, but going through with taking her powers away anyways. The conflict with Nero could instead have been that Guraad would want to destroy or get rid of the powers, where Nero would want Guraad to have them. With Guraad changing her mind, Nero could try and steal them for himself at the last second, but get interrupted by Seiya. That way, Guraad stands by her opinion that she can continuously be a threat to Sienna, who now is alone to find the knights as her dad wanted. Editor's note here, I know I didn't really talk about colors or anything regarding the characters like Nero, Guraad, or Docrates, and the reason is that they're all wearing black, which isn't really inspiring or means anything other than this is a clear indication that these are villains. The only other character that does have any color scheme is Patricia, but she is wearing mainly blues, which definitely could tie her towards Pegasus Knight and Athena, but since we don't really know anything about her other than being Seiya's sister and plot motivation, then I didn't really feel it necessary to include it in this video. Okay, back to the main thing. For the rating, I have chosen to give every category that I'm gonna go through 10 out of 10. And then every time I have seen something in the movie that pulls me out of the immersion or just doesn't make any sense, I deduct a point. So the first topic is acting. The acting in this movie is not super great. You can tell that it is acting where it is meant to be read. It has been written and it's meant to be read, not acted. And that's the thing I have about dialect being spoken, but you can tell that it's book speak, if that makes any sense. So sometimes in the movie they say something and it brings me out of the immersion with the question of who would ever say that out loud? Nobody. And here are some examples. In one of the first scenes, Seiya is running away from the Black Knights whom he just have seen for the first time. He runs away with Alman, who clearly knows what they are and who they're coming from. Then Seiya asks, what are those guys made of? That is one of the points that I was the first thing on my list because it broke me. And is also one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video. So we will deduct a point for that line. The next point that I want to take out from our total score is whenever Marin speaks. It's off and I couldn't put my finger on it before I looked up the casting list. Because I could tell that of course it had been dubbed, because she is wearing a metal mask the entire time, so it would be very hard to pick up her voice when acting as well. But it has been dubbed and or mixed in a way where you can still tell that it's her speaking through a mask. And then again, like I talked about with the characters, she is played by one person but voiced by another, which also can make it a little bit more difficult, and I would love to know how they did that on set, but for what I could figure out, it's very hard to find behind the scenes of anything for this movie. And the last point I want to deduct is that this movie barely passes the Bechdel test. There are 3 female characters in this movie, and only 2 of them have conversations with each other. But I would barely count the conversations that Sienna and Guraad has. but I'm still gonna deduct it because I don't feel like it counts, because most of it they're talking about is only happening because of a man, so I don't think it completely passes. So for all in all, this movie gets a 7 out of 10, which is way more than I personally want to rate it. So let's just deduct another point and give it a 6 out of 10, just because of my personal bias. Costumes. Good gracious God. After knowing that this is a manga, I understand so many more choices. The entire time I was joking to my roommate about the main character cosplaying Grian because of his red t-shirt and jeans, but it is a really good costume to have for a main character because it's recognizable, it's easy, and it's probably very easy for the costume department as well. But then you see costumes like Guraad's outfits, which are definitely custom, versus like Alman's suits. We love a good man in a suit, but it's not very original. First one, I have deducted a point for Miriam's armor. She is the Silver Knight, and compared to the Golden Knight, she has barely any armor on, other than the mask and a few decorations. And I would assume that the armor we're shown in the movie isn't the full armor, kinda like the armor that Seiya has when he first gets the Pegasus armor, but it's still very minimal. I like the colors and the combination, especially in this background and the scene. She's the Silver Knight. I had hoped for just a little bit more. And I'm gonna deduct a point from the makeup that Sienna has. And afterwards I have seen a panel where they talked about the movie, and the actress makeup looks fine. In the entire movie she is wearing very prominent makeup and she's wearing very bright lipstick every time. It makes her look old, and especially in a dream sequence where it might just have been the lighting, the effects and the editing, but then mixed with that makeup, it makes her look like she could be a mom, which isn't a bad thing. But she is supposed to be 18 years old and the reborn goddess. It doesn't quite mix up with what it's supposed to be. So a point away from that, which gives us a total score of 8 out of 10, which is deserved. These costumes and makeup and hair, it's all just, I love it. It's beautiful and my eyes are very pleased. Special effects. I'm gonna deduct a point because sometimes the fighting seems too much like acting and not fighting. I know they had a bunch of very talented stunt actors helping them with what they needed to do for the movie, but sometimes it's just not fighting. You can tell that it's acting, but it's very few times, and one of the times is where Seiya is about to be trained to be the Pegasus Knight, and I know that it's supposed to be him. He don't know how to fight, but then putting it into the fact that his sister has taught him to fight a little bit before, it doesn't really make sense that he just don't know how to fight, that he's just bad. And also I want to also put this in, no, this doesn't count as the acting, this is more of a choreography, which I feel like is a better word for it, so I will sneak it into the special effects just before any of you gets mad about it. And I'm gonna deduct a point from this scene where Cassios beats the ever-loving shit out of Seiya, and he barely looks to have any bruises. Now Cassios at this point has been fused with a Black Knight prototype that is an overpowered Black Knight, and I do get the idea that the Pegasus Knight is able to break this prototype, as we see later, but he is currently almost unconscious and don't have access to the Pegasus armor, so how is it protecting him from being smashed to the face? That's leave us with 8 out of 10. And I kind of almost want to give it a 9 out of 10, but I feel like 8 is fine because sometimes it's not quite what I wanted, but most of the time it is beautiful and perfect. Staying true to the plot. So anyways, staying true to the plot, which was really hard to keep track of because a lot of the times they drop lore points but spread apart by 20-30 minutes. It's very hard to keep track of which is connected to which, and then also remembering everything that happens in every single scene in this really long movie. So it makes it very difficult to keep track of these, but I compiled a little bit here. First point, we deduct for why is Alman in the Octagon, which is controlled by his ex-wife Guraad, who are both looking for people with Cosmo. Let me just put this by you again. Guraad wants people with Cosmo so she can drain them, and she can get hold of the Pegasus Knight and eliminate him before he becomes the Pegasus Knight. Isn't it then very important that she makes sure that nobody else gets these people with Cosmo? Like her ex-husband, who has Athena, who is trying to train knights to protect her and stop Guraad from doing what Guraad is trying to do. Why is Alman allowed into the Octagon? Second point that I'm deducting is I'm not going down there. 10 seconds passes, the scene changes, he goes down there. They do this a couple of times where they're saying, I will not do that, and then they proceed to do it. Maybe I'm just autistic and can't understand sarcasm and humor, but that's just bad, right? For example, the next part is, break this rock and I will train you. Proceeds to not break the rock, tries. Wow, I cannot speak anymore, I have an accent now. And this brings us to the next point of, break this rock and I will train you. Where Seiya then proceeds to not break the rock twice, and then the Silver Knight starts training her. I understand that he was about to break the rock with the Pegasus powers, but it doesn't make sense. Say what you mean and mean what you say. If you don't want to train him unless he can break the rock, then don't train him until he can break the rock. Have a training montage where he tries over and over and over again, and then finally he is able to break the rock, but just barely. And then she realizes something is blocking you, we need to figure out what that is, and then train him. Third point is something that made me really upset because it involves Sean fucking Beans. In this scene, he is throwing a bomb towards Guraad saying, I will take you down with me because I need to kill you, because that's the only reason we need to solve this. So he's willing to kamikaze his way to kill the threat of Athena. He sees his ex-wife walk from an open terrace door into the room. He says, I'm gonna take you down with him, with me. And she starts running, and then he throws the bomb, which he knows will only explode the mansion, because afterwards we see the whole mansion absolutely explode, but everyone outside the mansion just kind of gets pushed away by the blast of the explosion, and everyone else that was outside the mansion is fine. They all lived, but Sean Bean fucking dies. So knowing that only the mansion will explode, then why does he throw the bomb when he knows that Guraad can just run out to the balcony? She could even jump off the balcony and still survive because the blast wouldn't kill her. That plot point has annoyed me so much, and even more when I now know that it's a thing that Sean Bean just dies in every movie that he's in. I am so upset about this, I could just scream! The fifth I'm gonna take down is a plot point I didn't pick up on before the fourth time watching this movie. And mind you that one of these times that I watched the movie, I paused every time I was taking notes so I could pay attention again to what was happening. In one of the final scenes that Guraad is in, she says, "I gave up on fixing this body long ago." And my initial notes were that then why does she keep kidnapping people and draining them from their cosmo to fuse into her arms? But apparently it's because she got fused with the golden armor that then kept her alive after Athena almost killed her, and she needs cosmo constantly to keep the arms working. But this plot point is just not executed well enough. 4 times. And if that isn't enough, then I'll like combine it with, she says, "I have a ticking bomb inside of me," which is Athena's curse, which she only mentions 1 time, as well as ticking bomb. So I don't know what any of that means. So I'm gonna deduct a point from it. That leaves us to a 5 out of 5 staying true to the plot. And I feel like the 5 that I'm keeping is fairly fair for the movie, because they do try to do a lot of things, which makes it a little bit messy, and especially when they cut the things they want to do into different scenes or put things in between, making it really difficult to even have an idea on what is the whole lore about it. But I will say this is definitely better than having an empty plot where barely anything happens, so we have to like fill it in with nonsense stuff, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But apparently also this has been a very upsetting to the fans, because again, you're never ever gonna satisfy the fans of a manga when it becomes a live action adaptation. But from an outsider perspective, I also want to like be able to go into the movie without knowing about the manga, which it kinda does okay in my opinion. So I'm gonna keep the 5 out of 5 of staying true to the plot. For the last, I have just like a little bit for shits and giggles. I have 2 categories. The first of like times the movie made me giggle on purpose, and times the movie made me giggle not on purpose. So let's start with like purposefully making me giggle. In this scene, Seiya wakes up on the aircraft of Alman, and he is shocked because these guys basically just kidnapped him and he don't know where he is. He tries to leave his seat, but he's stopped by his seatbelt, and it makes me giggle every time, because then he just realizes, oh shit, safety, right, okay, then unbuckles and then runs away. I giggle. And now moving on to times the movie made me giggle on purposefully. I don't think that's a word, but I'm using it. Number 1, Cybertruck. Of course, Alman has a Cybertruck. Of course he has a Cybertruck. Number 2, Seiya climbs up a cliff through a thunderstorm. Number 3, Cassios is a badass himbo, and he has a line where he bursts into the room and he says, "Where is Seiya?"
Whatever her name is.
And I just love him. That was the moment where I was like, I love this stupid man. Number 4, this happens later in the movie, so it's not funny before you actually rewatch the movie. But when Guraad has Sienna on the table that's gonna take her god powers away, Guraad says that we both have a ticking bomb inside of us. Yours is just so much stronger, and they keep like referring to her god powers as an atom bomb that's gonna explode. But that's first later, after Alman has already died. But when Alman is about to set up the bomb, he hides it inside the statue of Athena. That is so funny, but paced wrong, which is such a shame because I found it so funny. And the 5th time is one of the final scenes. You see Guraad have been very damaged, but she really want to stop this ritual of like taking Sienna's powers away, and she's pulling out cords from this computer, and one of the last big wires she's trying to pull out, you see Nero stand up and shout, "Stop, you fool!" And then she just like falls. So she stops, which is ironically funny when some of the main cast says, "I'm not doing that," and then they do it. But then when a villain tells a previously villain but not villain anymore, stop it, and she obeys, that's funny. Let's touch on some plot holes, shall we? The very first plot hole is one of the very first lines in the entire movie, as Alman is narrating this universe to us. And I did not know this before I watched some of the behind the scenes of introducing the main cast and their characters on one of their main YouTube channels, where the actor of Sienna says that the whole Athena thing is a prophecy. Prophecies are not set in stone, but this whole thing of Sienna becoming Athena and then wanting to explode the whole world, we never told that it's a prophecy. We just told that's how it is. That's just what's gonna happen. And yes, they are a little bit shown to be in the visions, where Alman says, oh, visions are just a possibility, they're not a guaranteed. But anyways, that is not a point on my list. One of the first lines are, Athena swore to protect the people and brave knight swore to protect her. But then why is Guraad scared of Athena bringing war when she has turned a leaf from the traditional old gods who just wanted war and destruction? Then why is Guraad scared? Just because her daughter dreamed and had a vision that it might happen? It's a little vague, and I don't really get that base of motivation. My second point is the very classic of I have touched on with the acting. What are they made of? You don't want to know! Nobody talks like that! Again, like, dumb thing to ask. He should ask, who are they? Why are they after me or us? But no, he's interested in... he is interested in knowing what the armor is made of. Hope you had a light dinner! The car spins around once, maybe, we don't know. The special effects doesn't really tell us what happens. We see explosions and smoke. The car is in smoke, we don't know if it's spinning. When you tapped into the cosmo at the octagon, I didn't tap into anything. This kind of refers to Seiya not knowing anything about Cosmo or the Pegasus Knight or martial arts, which when we've seen in a flashback scene that Patricia has taught him these things and also taught about the Pegasus. And in the deleted scenes, which in the movie they have used parts of this deleted scene, but they have cut out the part where she talks about, if you want this Pegasus necklace off of me, you have to defeat me in fight. And then they show like the way that they fight, and there, will you give up? Never. He has been told some of these things. So how does he not know about Cosmo or anything? I don't get that. I'll contact Mylock to pick you up. Does the Silver Knight have a phone that she can just call Alman to? Or does she have like psychic powers that allows her to contact them? Did Alman call the Silver Knight before and be like, hey, there's a new boy, get ready to train him? Because I would assume she has some way of contacting, because surely Mylock didn't wait for Seiya to be done, because at least a full day and a night happens before Seiya decides to go back. This is a very minor detail, but it caught me. It caught my interest. Why did Guraad close down the octagon after Seiya was there? Nero sensed the Cosmo was legit, so I guess the only reason is that he can tell regular Cosmo and Pegasus Cosmo apart, and that's why that's what she was really after. But they don't really tell that they can tell the difference between Pegasus Cosmo and regular Cosmo. So why did they not keep it open to collect more people with Cosmo to increase the chance of finding the Pegasus Knight? Because this ties into Guraad admitting to Sienna that she gave up on fixing her arms and or cursed arms a long time ago, but she's still using Cosmo from other people a couple of scenes ago. So why not keep the octagon open so she can keep her arms intact. Why didn't Sienna get trained by Miriam to control her cosmo? I'm well aware that she has god powers and Miriam trains knights, but I would assume the concept is the same, because it doesn't seem like Sienna has any martial art skills. She's never seen to fight, and she's never seen to use her powers ever, purposefully, which makes me think that she just never had any training. She just woke up, had Athena powers, and then was like, okay, cool, I feel like you should learn how to control that so you don't destroy the universe, and then just let her go on her merry way. And I think this is one of the points where I think Guraad and Alman were indifferent, where Guraad feels like they agreed that they would do whatever necessary when she became dangerous, where Alman said, no, I'm not gonna let you kill my daughter. So he thinks, if I just love Sienna enough and show her love, then surely she won't go against my words of not destroying the planet. And also, where did Alman and Guraad learn about Cosmo? Is it general knowledge? I would assume no, because Seiya doesn't know about Cosmo. And Guraad has made a lot of mechanical and scientific, what's the word? Inventions using the gold armor, which maybe is fused with her. And she also knows how to drain Cosmo. So how did they know, how did they learn to do that? Because Sienna did say that when she was a baby, or when she was very young, I assume she was a baby, she had a burst of Cosmo that broke Guraad's arms. And afterwards, Alman used the golden armor to fix her arms. But Guraad has to use Cosmo to keep the arms intact. Where did they learn all of this? Was this just fun facts Alman knew because he was interested in ancient Greek history? I would hope that they would kind of make a sequel about that, because that would be very interesting, with the whole, oh, back in the days all of these epic things happen. Then make the movie about those things. Don't just tell us that these things happened. Make the movie about that. Out of the plot, they cast Caitlin Hudson to act as Miriam, but have Katie Ann Moy voice her, which is confusing and interesting to me. And this leads into a theory that I had, like one of the first ever shots we see of Miriam, where she's Patricia, right? She is Patricia, because the whole thing is Seiya wanna find her, but he can't, because she's right there. And I hoped it would be revealed, but it doesn't. And I'm not sure why. There's probably some secret of, I promise to not tell anyone, and if I told, they would hurt you, blah blah blah. But she's right there, right? Because she is voiced by a Japanese woman. Final thoughts. Going a little bit off a script, I also want to mention a character that I feel like could have been a good plot point as well. Early on in the movie, Docrates gets kidnapped by Guraad's Black Knights. He is then later interrogated by Nero to find where Alman is. And we don't know if Docrates spills the beans. From what we see, he just screams in fear, but he's not said to reveal anything. Later, Sienna has a small burst of her Cosmo while she is outside of the mansion, which could lead Guraad to find her, which she does like very soon afterwards. Because that scene pissed me off so bad. Seiya comes back from training with Miriam after he had learned that Alman was there when Guraad took Patricia. So he rushes back to the mansion to get answers from Alman. And instead of taking Seiya into a room where both Mylock, Alman, and Sienna all know what happened to Patricia, Sienna then takes Seiya on a motorcycle ride away from the mansion, as Mylock says, Sienna, you know the rules, you're not allowed to leave the mansion, because that's the only place where her bursts of cosmo can be contained and not detected by Guraad. She then takes him away from the mansion and they have a talk where Sienna then has a burst that then technically can make Guraad find her. Instead, why didn't they just keep inside the mansion, go to a room, have this conversation where they all could talk about it, or Sienna could do it alone. She could easily take Seiya into a room, tell her dad, "You're not going to my room, I can talk with this boy inside my room on my own." She could then talk to him and explain all of this, and her burst will still be contained. But then Docrates' kidnapping would make sense, because he could have spilled the beans on where to find them, and then he would matter. Because if he didn't say anything and it was the burst outside the mansion that led to them being found, then why is Docrates there? Then he doesn't make any sense. Then his scenes could easily be removed from the movie and it wouldn't make any difference. I'm so upset. I hope he comes back, because he's lovely and he deserved more than the 3 scenes he was in. I did talk about this a little bit with the overanalyzing Alman. I am very tired of the sacrifice one to save many, but I can't sacrifice the one because I love them. And yet I let my employees get murdered for the same cause to protect the one that I don't want to kill. I am so annoyed by it. But then again, in a sense, for Alman Kido it kind of makes sense, because he's okay with Docrates just being kidnapped and being kept for so long, and he's okay with his guards just being murdered by Cassios in order to protect Sienna, who isn't even in the mansion. So I guess it makes sense that he just don't care about anyone else than Sienna. But also, what a shit character then. In my opinion, the fighting choreography is almost perfect. I mean, I don't really have any experience with this myself, but it looks so natural 99% of the time. The color grading and lighting in this entire movie is amazing. Every time there is any scene with light, it just looks so good. The lighting and the editing just makes the colors pop every time. One of my favorite color scheme scenes is when Miriam is training Seiya in the little mountain thing. The small red that they both have in their outfits, the little brownish red that the Silver Knight has in her armor, as well as Seiya's t-shirt and his skin color, it's so beautifully popping, but it doesn't make the background look boring either. It's just so good, 99% of the time as well as Seiya's flashbacks. They're all in this nighttime scene, which usually that's very tropey. When it's nighttime, it's just completely black on the screen. You can't see anything because it's just dark and the grading is awful. But here you can clearly see everything. You can clearly see Seiya's wearing a red shirt, Patricia is wearing all blue. You can see her necklace, you can see their facial expressions, you can see the trees in the background. Even the night scene is perfect. And later, with the behind the scenes videos that I've seen, the car scenes, for example, that was screens playing back what was happening, and then they were in the car moving. They also had their sets which would move with the camera, which is very interesting. I would love to see more behind the scenes of that, because I haven't really seen much, and the things that they do show is more like compilations. But I just love to see way more behind the scenes about this. I want to know how they did everything. And the backgrounds, when we get to this, the backgrounds, my gosh. If you really start noticing this in other movies, you start noticing that when they have wide shots, they seem very empty. There is a blue sky, but it's blue. There's only one color of blue. It seems so empty. But this movie has a lot of shots where it's just wide shot and then like a tiny subject, and yet they make it look interesting still. You can barely see the characters or what they're doing. They might just be a silhouette, but it's beautiful and interesting anyway. And I wish I could like pinpoint what they do. And the scene where Seiya realizes what his real purpose is, it is just gray, and the silhouette of them and the closet is all dark, but there's like smoke coming, and that shows like some kind of interest. Or they have like a beautiful like gradients in the skyline. There's always something that makes these wide shots just look absolutely beautiful. That's also one of the things. I don't know if they were on location filming, if this is like actual places and rooms that they are filming in, or how much is green screen, or how much is computer animated. But oh my gosh, the locations are so gorgeous. I keep referring back to when Miriam is training Seiya, because that is just one of my, like, it's so beautifully appealing, even though there's barely anything. There's rocks, that's it, but it's still so gorgeous. And the fighting pit is also just a very like like very, I can't speak anymore. So again, I don't know how much of it is actually green screen, but whatever it is, it just looks absolutely epic. So big props to the prop makers, because they did such a fantastic job. Stock footage. I feel like there is a bunch of times where they use stock footage or stock footage like footage. There is a recurring sunset slash rise that is cut out and like put in different places throughout the movie, and if I really started to overanalyze that, it probably has meaning to whatever scene was before and after that, but it's also just filler, because all of the times where it is in montages, for example the training montage, and it's hard to determine if this means passing of time, saying, oh, we see the sun rise, which means it's a new day. But we actually don't know that. We don't know if he has been training for a whole day, or if this is just, oh, a couple of hours has passed. So the way that they're using the stock footage is not coming through, but they also use the stock footage kinda with showing the location. But the way that they use these location shots are very brilliant, because they show the location, oh, this is Alman's mansion, which then next scene will show something inside the mansion, which gives a very easy leanway into, oh, this is where we are, this is the characters that we are about to meet, this is the characters who are about to interact. We kind of get a more easy fade into what the next scene is, which is actually very smart. And I don't know if all of these like location shots are actual buildings or if they are digitally created, but either way they look perfect for what they do. I mean, of course there is a giant skyline building with a giant glowing G on it. I would hope there is, but I would assume that most of them are digitally created, but they look so realistic. And of course there are some places where you can tell it's that computer animated, but it looks so great. I would say throughout the movie the pacing of it is fairly good. Something happens all the time, but again, as I said earlier, maybe something happens too much. Again, I would rather prefer that the movie had fewer points they wanted to come across than the amount that they have, so that the points they're trying to like feed us will get more time, and then unnecessary stuff will like be put away or explained faster and together versus then like split into parts. But overall, like watching it through the first time, I did have a decent okay time, so I would say that's a win for a movie. Another point I want to make across is the movie's message. The only way I found a message for this movie was behind the scenes, where the director and the actors were saying it's about hope and being able to do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it. But the movie is so busy with different kinds of plots that they're trying to push through. With Seiya wanting to find his sister, but the only way that he can if he lets go of the feeling that he feels like he needs to, then he can do it. But he didn't do it because we have to do that in another movie. And Sienna's character arc is, I am destined to become this, and I just can't avoid it, but I don't want to. So her accepting that, oh, maybe I don't have to, but then by saying, oh, right, I don't have to do anything, that leads her to being able to control Athena's powers, but she still, in the future, will become Athena or control her powers. So that doesn't change anything at all. Editor's note. Another thing I want to mention is the scene where Seiya is comforting his younger self. It is a very touching and nice scene, but for me it was very difficult figuring out what that actually meant or what it accomplished. Of course, we see that it accomplished that he somehow unlocks the Pegasus power with that, but it's not really explained how, quote unquote, saving himself is done by doing that. They have some very conflicting messages that aren't super clear, which a good adventure movie definitely doesn't need. But when they mention it in the behind the scenes, I feel like they should show it in the movie as well. Back to Real Me. In a way, I don't see the movie put out a message very clearly, which is definitely a downfall, which it doesn't have to put across any message at all. It can still just be entertaining, but then it also has to be entertaining without being confusing with too many plot points and information and lore dumps at the same time. So for that, it doesn't work. And like with all of this combined, we're starting to reach the end of this video, and it seems like critics agree with what I have said. Most of the script has been written before I looked into any behind the scenes or the actors or reviews or anything. I didn't even know it had a manga throughout 80% of the script. But most of the critics do agree with a lot of the same points that I have put across, especially the fans of the anime. Every time there is a live adaptation of a already existing media, is it books or whatever, it very rarely hits the mark, especially with manga and anime. When that gets made into live action, like 9 out of 10 times it's never great. And it seems like, of what I could look up, that the fans were just disappointed. The critics don't like it, the fans don't like it. The film had a 60 million budget and made home 7 million. That is an insane difference. But the money went so well into this project, and the movie is so deserving of all that work that was put into it. And what a shame that I didn't hear anything about it in 2022 when it was in theaters. Because if I watched this movie on the big screen with my butter popcorn and my soda that would have to make me pee 10 minutes within the movie, I would have eaten this up. This would have been so great. I would have told all my friends, please watch this. I will go in and watch this movie again with you. It's a little busy, but I'll keep you up with what I know so you are ready to watch this movie with me again. So I'm just sad that it didn't get the attention it deserved when it was in theater. And since it has been 2 years of its release and I couldn't find anyone talking about a sequel being announced, it probably won't happen, sadly. This is the thing that with a lot of movies, they try to come up with an original or try to adapt something that's already been made, that they ended on an open note of this is what we want to do next time, but then it just doesn't happen. It has this very sad aura about it. Instead, Hollywood should maybe focus on making movies a movie and not try and make it into a whole franchise. But that is a very big topic that I don't know too much about, so I will not say more about it than that. All in all, this movie has potential. I definitely recommend giving it a watch, giving it 2, 3, 4 watches, and then maybe you'll love it or hate it as much as I do. I definitely don't like that they're trying to make this the new Percy Jackson, but it also makes sense that they put it on Netflix now, where we have the gap between these new, oh, we need the new Percy Jackson or the new Hunger Games. And whenever there is a tiny time slot where we have to wait in between seasons or movies, then try and force anything out. That is executively very smart, and I hope it lands to like a bunch of people out there, because younger me would have eaten this up and would have created AUs for all of my OCs to be in and be reborn gods and goddesses and had to control their powers and be knights to protect each other. And now that I think about it, I'm gonna end this video so I can go write a D&D campaign based on this, because yeah, who doesn't want to be a reincarnated god or goddess? So we'll see if there's more movies that catch my interest like this, or if I find myself hating something really much that I get so hyperfixated on it for 4 days that I have to make a whole video about it. Otherwise, thanks for being here. Stay hydrated and be nice to each other. See ya.